Well, some companies get it wrong in a crisis and some companies get it right in a crisis. Of course, when you get it wrong, it's more memorable. People remember the bad times. And of course, if a crisis plays out over many days on our screens and on social media, for example, then we're going to remember that more than the crisis that may have been well managed behind the scenes. But I think one reason why some companies do get it wrong is that they're not prepared for every eventuality. They may be looking in the wrong place in terms of their own crisis preparedness. And a model I've used in the book explains that crises can come basically from external or internal sources, and they can come from incidents or they can come from issues. So if you think of that as a four-box matrix, if you have internal incidents, that's what I call a safety risk, and they're the sort of classic crises that we all think about when we think about crises, such as what happened to BP in the Gulf of Mexico, such as what happened to Costa Cruises with the Costa Concordia sinking. If you think about external incidents, they're incidents that are not caused by you as a company, they're caused by factors beyond your control. So I call that a security risk, and that covers things like terrorist events, piracy, but also natural events such as earthquakes or storms. So the storms in early 2014 in the UK would be a good example of these. Also perhaps the ash cloud that many companies in the travel industry in particular had to contend with a few years back. And then I move across to issues, and you look at the external issues that can lead to crises that companies face. I call that policy risk. And those are the big sort of controversial issues of the day that companies can find themselves on the wrong side of. So for example, GM food, the current debate about fracking, corporation tax, which hit a few companies back in 2013. And then finally, it's the internal issues, so those issues that come out of performance, and I call this category performance risk. And that could cover anything to do with the behaviour of employees, the performance of the company, environmental performance, social performance, financial performance, and governance. And examples that might fit into that category would be the LIBOR scandal, the News International phone hacking scandal, the horsemeat scandal. And you can see there, scandal is a word that pops up when we're talking about crises from that category. And what I found is that actually a lot of crises that play out on our TV screens these days fall into that latter category, that performance risk category, because that's about the day-to-day performance of the company going horribly, horribly wrong, and it shows that there's something not quite working about the organisation. And they're often the hardest ones to deal with. I think there are some really good examples of good and bad crisis management from recent years. The one really good example of crisis management, I think, is how Tesco's dealt with the horsemeat scandal. They had options. They could have joined the pack. There are other organisations who were also suffering because of the horsemeat contaminations. But they really did everything right in terms of crisis management as far as I'm concerned. They really took ownership of the issue. They communicated a great deal throughout the duration of the issue. They communicated from the top. There was visible leadership from the CEO, Philip Clark. They took out ads in papers. They explained what was going on. They said sorry. In many ways, it was a communications masterclass from Tesco's. Some people have criticised Tesco's actually for taking too much of the ownership of the issue, but I felt they had no choice. So I think that was a really good example of crisis management. And maybe one of the most important points is that they promised change. And in crisis recovery, you need to promise change rather than just say, we've learned, we will be better. You need to explain what you're going to do to change the organisation. One organisation I felt didn't cope with the crisis very well was Costa Cruises and its parent company Carnival, when the Costa Concordia sank off the coast of Italy. And you know, I can sit here and give you lots of reasons why I felt it was bad, but most importantly, the families of those who died and the survivors of the terrible incident, their accounts of how they experienced Costa in the aftermath of that crisis were perhaps most telling. It didn't appear that Costa communicated particularly well, either with the media, but most importantly with the families, and the spectacle of the company versus captain court case really didn't help the company at all as it was trying to recover from a terrible disaster.